Here's something strange about the way we count nuclear weapons. We count them very carefully in Iran, in North Korea, in Pakistan, in India. We have inspectors and resolutions and sanctions and red lines drawn in permanent marker. We are, as a civilization, very serious about this, except when we're not. Consider a country that has never signed the Nuclear Non-Proliferation Treaty. A country that has never allowed International Atomic Energy Agency inspectors access to its full nuclear program. A country that, by nearly every credible intelligence estimate from the CIA to the IAEA itself, possesses somewhere between 80 and 400 nuclear warheads. Now consider that this country has faced no sanctions for this, no UN Security Council resolutions demanding compliance, no presidential ultimatums delivered from podiums. Now ask yourself, why does that feel normal to you? When did you stop noticing it? That country is Israel. And the silence around it is the story. This is not. A story about whether Israel should exist or whether its security concerns are legitimate. They are, and any honest accounting of the region requires saying so plainly. This is a story about a specific, documented double standard that has shaped American foreign policy for more than 50 years, and whether that standard can survive the world that is being built around it right now. Let's go back. In 1963, President John F. Kennedy wrote a series of urgent letters to Israeli Prime Minister David Ben-Gurion. Kennedy was alarmed by intelligence suggesting Israel was developing nuclear capabilities at the Negev Nuclear Research Center near Dimona. He wanted inspections. He pushed hard. Ben-Gurion famously stonewalled. Kennedy died in November of that year. His successors, each in turn, quietly let the matter recede. By the late 1960s, the CIA was producing internal assessments concluding that Israel had likely crossed the nuclear threshold. The Johnson administration looked at those SSSEMNTs and made a choice. The choice was silence. A policy was born not through legislation, not through a formal decision anyone signed, but through the accumulated weight of things left unsaid. That policy has a name. Insiders call it nuclear opacity, the deliberate, mutually agreed upon fiction that Israel neither confirms nor denies possessing nuclear weapons. It was not an accident. It was engineered. And the United States was the architect as much as Israel was. Here's what we know about why. The alternative was worse, or so the reasoning went. Formally acknowledging Israel's arsenal would have triggered American laws, specifically the Symington Amendment and the Glenn Amendment that prohibited U.S. foreign assistance to countries pursuing clandestine nuclear programs. Israel receives, as of the most recent figures, approximately $3.8 billion annually in American military assistance. Acknowledging the obvious would have required cutting that off. So the obvious was never acknowledged. Now walk that logic forward. For 3 years, beginning in 2021, the United States, alongside the European Union, Britain, France, Germany, Russia, and China, engaged in painstaking negotiations with Iran, a country that has signed the NPT, that does allow IAEA inspectors, that possesses no confirmed nuclear weapon over the precise enrichment levels of its uranium. Sanctions crippled the Iranian economy. Diplomatic isolation followed Iran into every multilateral room. The message was unambiguous. Nuclear ambition, even potential nuclear ambition, carries a price. Notice that message. Notice who receives it and who doesn't. This is the paper trail that analysts and legal scholars have been assembling for decades, and it leads somewhere uncomfortable. Former IAEA Director General Mohammed El-Baradei, a Nobel laureate, said directly that Israel's undeclared nuclear arsenal was one of the principal reasons states in the Middle East believe they need their own deterrence. The logic is not complicated. If one country in a volatile region can acquire nuclear weapons without consequence, the incentive structure for every other country in that region changes. Iran watched Iraq get invaded. It watched Libya give up its weapons program and then watched Muammar Gaddafi get killed. It watched North Korea keep its weapons and get a summit. The lesson that history teaches is not subtle. And here's the part that should concern all of us. The world in which this double standard operates comfortably is shrinking. The post-Cold War unipolar order in which American power was so overwhelming that Washington could essentially write the rules of nuclear accountability and exempt its own allies, that world is under visible strain. The global South, which was never fully persuaded by that order to begin with, is increasingly vocal. In forums from the United Nations General Assembly to the non-aligned movement to the emerging BR1CS architecture, governments are asking with growing directness why non-proliferation is a principle that seems to apply only to certain countries. That question used to be easy to dismiss. It is becoming harder. Within the Jewish community itself, a significant and growing movement has been grappling with exactly these contradictions. Liberal Jewish organizations from J Street to Jewish Voice for Peace, from progressive rabbinical associations to academics across major American universities, have drawn a clear distinction between Jewish identity and Zionist political ideology as practiced by the current Israeli government. These are not peripheral voices. They are doctors, lawyers, professors, rabbis, journalists, people whose families survived the Holocaust and who take seriously the moral obligation that history places on them. Their argument, stated carefully, is that the protection of Jewish life and the policies of the Israeli state are not the same thing, and conflating them does a disservice. That's both. When American institutions treat any criticism of Israeli government policy as inherently anti-Semitic, these voices argue it doesn't protect Jewish people, it insulates a government from the kind of scrutiny that every government everywhere requires to remain accountable. The revelation when you sit with all of this is quiet. There is no single smoking document. There is no hidden conspiracy. There is something more durable and more troubling than a conspiracy. There is a system. A system in which the application of international norms is determined not by the norms themselves, but by the geopolitical weight of the party in question. That system has functioned more or less for half a century. What's changing is not the system, it's the world's patience with it. The open questions are these. First, as the 2024 and 2025 Israeli military campaigns in Gaza generated the largest rupture in Western public opinion on Israel in decades, protests in London, Paris, Sydney. A. Ninth Washington International Court of Justice proceedings. European governments breaking with Washington. Does the political cost of maintaining nuclear opacity finally begin to outweigh its strategic benefit? That calculation has never seriously been tested before. It may be now. Second, if a new global order does emerge, one in which American primacy is shared or contested, who enforces non-proliferation norms and by what standard? The answer to that question will determine whether the NPT survives as a meaningful instrument or becomes a document that only the powerless are expected to honor. Here is what we're left with. The most destabilizing force in nuclear proliferation may not be the countries that openly pursue the bomb. It may be the precedent set by the country that was allowed to keep it in silence and the lesson that silence taught everyone watching. The rules only work if they apply to everyone. That's not idealism, that's physics.